ready for part 2 of our segment about influencer marketing.
Let's do
it. Let's dive right in.
Okay.
So the last time we talked, you told us, you basically gave us a good definition. I know your firm has influencers currently. So just take me through a day for the influencers, like describe a typical day for the influencers you work with.
Well, I think there's two sides to it, right? On our side, if it's a typical day of influencer bookings and marketing and collaborations, on our end of things, it looks a lot like, going from 0 to 100 would be on the top of the morning, our team gets together and we look at the campaigns we have. Currently, we have about 15 different client campaigns that are engaged with influencers that we book either weekly or, more than once a week. So we go through the campaigns that already have the bookings, who needs bookings, what our client is willing to offer an influencer for their visit or for their collaboration, and then start reaching out. But even backing up before that, we have to actually go through on the agency side of things. We go through and look at who's the target. I think we spoke about this before. When you're doing a campaign, it's not just everybody doing the same thing. So for us, for example, we have some AI companies we work with as well as restaurants, and those may be very well two different completely types of influencers that we're looking to partner with. So on the agency side, we really like to look at who are we, who's a foodie, who's a mom, who might be posting about their kids. So when you're doing that type of day, I think for us, at least, it's really honing in on who do we need to book and get going, and then also it's the follow-up. Confirming with the restaurant or with the client, so-and-so's coming in today. Is this ready? Is this prepared? And then after they come in, and whether it's, coming for food or going to a salon or whatever it may be, following back up for their feedback and then following up again within 7 days for a reel. So I don't know if it's really a one day copy paste thing. Every day is pretty different depending on what we're working on. And it can become pretty tedious on our end. I think a lot of influencers on their side of things that we work with, people don't realize the majority of influencers, unless you're in the very high 6-figure following, have another job. So unless you're in that millions or, 700, 800,000, and this is your career now where you're actually making a living from this, from your views and or collaborations, a majority of influencers do work, and then they do these other things and collaborations and pushes on the side. And if that's their goal to, recreate their income, that's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight.
So it brings me to my next question. How important are these influencers really to the brands or businesses you work with? Are they an integral part, you would say? I know you need a full marketing campaign, right, or PR campaign, should I say?
I think they're an important part. That might be a good word to use, because here's the thing. There's so many variables when working with influencers. I think one thing that, and as influencers get bigger, majority of them have a management team, right? And then that helps kind of drive the brand message. But a couple things we've seen, and it's just simple stuff of maybe a mistake of calling the restaurant the wrong name, and then that's on our end to say, hey, wait a minute, like, can we go back and fix this? So I do think they're very important because it gets new eyeballs on whatever XYZ brand it is. At the end of the day, what is marketing? It's pushing out a product or thing to people to get a return on what you're doing, right? You can have the best pizza in the world, but if nobody knows about it, you're not selling any slices of pizza and you go out of business. So as a part of a marketing campaign, yes, I think influencers are very important. I think they're very, I think that the new wave of technology and even media, goes towards this new outlet, I think we could call it, right? Of getting the way we get media, the way we get news, the way we get information is from influencers. And I think that everyone has to take that with a grain of salt all across the board of where you get your information. But I do think for what we personally partner with influencers with, whether it's foodies and great salons or things like that, it's also you like what someone represents, you like their content, and you're like, oh, I've tried something else that this girl posted about, I'm gonna try this because she posted about it too. So I do think they're important, and I think the consistency of, on the influencer side, how much they post is very important.
You and I talked before about business reviews, so I want to connect that with influencers. So, when I look up a restaurant, 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna look on Google to see what kind of reviews they get.
Yeah.
Do these influencers have an impact, either positive or negative, on business reviews, you think?
I don't think that they do on Google unless something happens, and then people start going to a restaurant's page and just completely trying to one-star them and do it facetiously, a lot of influencers usually don't review on Google and Yelp, even though I think those are credible sources that people still use. I don't think that those are gone. I think that they're very much alive and working. But the only time I've seen that really affect it is I think when something bad has happened, unfortunately. People like to write about the bad versus the good most of the time. If you think about it, when someone has a bad experience or complaint, that's usually when you go to something and give a review. But I want, if you're listening, how many times have you thought about how many times you wouldn't give a great review because you've just simply got great service and wanted to give an acknowledgement? So I do think it could affect it in a negative way. I don't think we've evolved into really having influencers go and encourage someone for Google. That might be a Google influencer campaign they could do, or Yelp on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. You also wanted to talk about treating influencers with respect, which, everyone should be treated with respect. Can you tell me your experience with that and, why we should treat these influencers with the same respect as any customer or partner?
And especially in the hospitality industry, some things I've seen, and this is very much understandable, that we know that waiters and waitresses work for tips. Bartenders, your bread and butter is your tips. And personally, our team, we encourage influencers to leave tips. I mean, that is something we've been put in the email, like, please tip your staff. I think that what happens and what I've seen happen, and I've actually stuck up for influencers on this side, and it's got me in a little bit of heat, but I think what sometimes happens, if the message is not communicated from the top down, and what I mean by that is, if we're booking this influencer through an owner and the owner doesn't relate to the general manager and the assistant manager, and then in turn the staff and the shift lead, that this is an influencer and we treat this important, because in reality, to me, this is free marketing. Yes, you're paying, you may be paying them with food, monetary, or drinks, but you're still getting marketing out of this, right? So we need to treat it as a marketing effort, not really as much as just a regular customer. And what I've seen is that, and heard from, and feedback I've gotten from influencers, is that some of these restaurants, because we're coming in and we may be getting our food free, the waiters just don't treat us well because they think they're not getting a tip. Wherein, we intend to leave a tip, but then when the service is bad, sometimes I've heard that influencers don't leave tips. And, it's always up to your own discretion, right? But I've seen it happen. I actually had a restaurant tell me that they thought the influencers did not like them because of how we booked them. And I was like, well, how do I control what happens inside your four walls? I think that establishments should look at an influencer coming in as a marketing tactic. It is someone coming in to give your establishment, product, brand, or whatever it is, service, eyeballs that are not currently on your brand. So I would say, instead of looking at it as a customer that's not paying, look at it as this person's coming in for a marketing campaign. And I think that we're not there yet with everyone. Some people are definitely there. I have some clients that are amazing and roll out the red carpet, and I can tell you what, they get the best reels, they get the best feedback, and a lot of times these influencers go back and spend their money on their own time, right? But on the flip side, when they feel like a nuisance, or like, oh, we're just here sat in a corner, they're not getting the best experience. So you're, of course, not in turn not going to get the best, whether it's a review like you asked, or reel, or the most excitement or effort into that reel, because they feel like they were just there. And I've actually had influencers tell me that, like, why would I be sat in a corner when I'm supposed to be filming this restaurant and putting it on TikTok for 100,000 people, but you sit me in the corner? How am I supposed to get the best shot? I've had influencers be brought dirty plates and asked for a plate to be back because they're like, you really don't want me to put this out there, do you? So I think maybe it's also on the brand side to say, this isn't a person coming in for a free service. This is someone coming in to help our marketing. And maybe that's where we need to shift our thoughts to make that a better experience all around for everybody.
So I got 2 more questions. And I'm sure you have plenty of examples, but can you provide an example where it really paid off for either a business, whether it's a restaurant, using an influencer, like any great examples or any relationships that were built between that influencer and the business?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have a lot of them, right? But I can say one is, well, one was, and some of them are not intentional. Let me be clear. Like, you can't make yourself go viral, right? Like, that's just not something that happens. A couple influencers have went viral, and like, of course, that brand now always thinks of them to bring them back because the reel was so great. There's a client we have, Fieldings River Oaks in Houston, Texas, and they are a modern steakhouse. And when I tell you, we have the standard of what we offer an influencer, and every single time we have gotten a feedback from an influencer that has went in there, it has been a 20 out of 10. They rolled out the red carpet. They're the people that are going to bring you an extra drink. They're going to bring you the dessert on, the table side dessert. They're going to go over and above. And I'll tell you, their impressions and their feedback has just been amazing. We've not gotten one bad review, but I will say the owner, the manager, and the staff, they all think of this as a marketing, part of our marketing team's efforts. And they truly treat it that way. We have a wait list of influencers that actually want to go to their restaurant because they're booked out so much. Because everyone wants to go there from what people talk, right? They say they're the best service. The food's amazing. They go over and above. And in their campaign, I mean, I can't tell you a single negative review I've ever had, or even a negative comment, let alone review on this specific brand because of how they execute. I've also seen it go the other direction, and I won't say names of places where they've not treated influencers well. And these influencers have straight up told me, if they're not cutting a check, I'm not going, because I will never go there anyways on my own, and I'm not going. And I'm like, okay. So those are two extremes, right? But when you make the extra effort and your entire team is on board, whether, like I said, it's a salon where someone comes in and gets their hair done, or even if it's like, let's say, a boutique where you're going in to get an outfit, that's a trade deal for a reel, your staff and the level of service is going to really matter. And influencers that have went into Fieldings, I would say we've started their campaign, I think that's in July officially. They've had at least 1 to 2 every single week since then. And I would say 80% of them have went back on their own and spent their own money. So not only are they coming in and doing the reel, but they actually have become customers of the restaurant because of how much they loved it.
So anything else that we didn't touch on for our last segment about influencer marketing that you want to share?
I think it's something that's not going anywhere. And I think it's something we have to adapt to. But I also believe that when you can get everyone on board to understand as the client, so that means as the brand, when I'm talking about that part, not the influencer part, but if you want to get the best out of your campaign, treat it as marketing. Don't treat them as like another customer coming in to eat for free or drink for free. Think of this as one of your arms of your marketing campaign that's going to, get butts in seats. Because at the end of the day, new eyeballs and new potential clients that come through your door, then it's of course your job to keep them there. But I do think we have to shift our thought process to it's just like an Instagram girl to this is a part of our marketing campaign that matters.